Okay, we are now moving on to solving one-step equations. So, first we're going to go through some vocab. Inverse operation means exactly what it says, doing the opposite operation that is happening to the variable. So for example, let's say we have something like 3x equals 15. Well, I would ask you, what is happening to x? We would say it's being multiplied by 3. The inverse operation of that would be dividing by 3. Equivalent equations. Basically, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. For example, in that first example I showed you, I divided by 3. I didn't just divide by 3 to the x, I also had to divide by 3 to the 15 as well. Now we have the addition property of equality, which basically says you can add to both sides of an equation and get an equivalent equation. Okay, if I were to add 3 to both sides of an equation, it would result in an equivalent equation. Subtraction property basically says the same thing, but subtraction. You can subtract both sides by the same number or letter. Multiplication. You can multiply both sides by the same, and they will result in an equivalent equation. Same thing with division. You can divide both sides by the same. When you are solving equations with subtraction, for example, we'll go through an example of each. First thing I want to do, let's say we're looking at this second one right here. What is happening to x? Well, we see that the x is being added by 9. So in order to get rid of the 9, we need to subtract 9. But we cannot just subtract it from the left side. In order to produce an equivalent equation, we need to subtract it from both sides. So from here, our 9's cancel, right? Because a positive 9 and a negative 9 is 0. And 5 minus 9, or 5 plus a negative 9, results as negative 4. Let's go ahead and do one with addition. Looking at this one right here. What is happening to x? Well, we see that it's being subtracted by 8. So in order to isolate x, which is always our goal to find out what x equals, we are going to do the inverse operation, which is to add 8. But whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. Well, we know negative 8 plus 8, that's going to cancel. And we get x is equal to negative 10 plus 8, which in this case, if I'm at negative 10 on a number line, and I need to add 8, I'm going to be going to the right. 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to end up at negative 2. We also can do some with division. Decide what is happening and do the reverse opposite. So for that first one, 5x equals 30, what is happening to x? It is being multiplied by 5, so therefore we need to do the inverse operation, which is divide both sides by 5. In this case, our 5's cancel, and we're left with x equals 6. Last examples we want to go through are examples with multiplication. Let's go ahead and start with this one right here. we need to decide what is happening to x. Well, in this case, x is being divided by -5. In order to get rid of something that's being divided, you need to multiply. So x is being divided by -5 means that we need to multiply both sides by -5 to get rid of that, the inverse operation. Then, from here, we know that the -5's will cancel out because -5 divided by -5 is 1, and 1 times x is x. And we get x is equal to, well, what's -4 times -5? Positive 20. Let's go ahead and move on down to the last one. This one's going to be a little bit different. We have to talk about some fractions. Well, in this case, let's decide what is happening to x. It's being multiplied by 3/7. So in order to get rid of something that's being multiplied, again, we are going to divide. So we are going to divide both sides by 3/7. But what does it mean to divide by a fraction? Hopefully you were able to see this and know exactly what to do, and you would not have to go through this long step. But when you divide by a fraction, that is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So in this case, 3/7 is 7/3 times 3/7 x equals 6 times 7/3. Okay, when you divide by a fraction, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So for here, these 7's cancel, these 3's cancel, I'm just left with x. And over here, we know that 6 over 3 is 2, and we're left with 2 times 7, which is 14.